Well, how did I get to Miami? Interesting story. Grew up in New York, Queens, New York, moved out to Long Island, Nassau County, Garden City. The only thing I didn't like about New York is the weather. It's gloom and doom 6 months out of the year. I said, the first opportunity I get, I'm going to beeline it to Florida because I want the sun. Bottom line, I want the sun. Now, coming from the city, of course, I'm not going to go on the boondocks in Florida somewhere, right? So I'm going to head to one of the cities. And Miami, obviously, is a popular, nice city, has restaurants and all these types of things that we're used to in New York. But I consider Miami, when we moved here, it was nice people, but I consider Miami the biggest city in South America because it's like what happened in New York. You had the Europeans settling in New York, right? Me being Italian descent, we had the Jews, the Germans, the Irish, the Poles living around us, right? So it was like a melting pot of Europeans in the Northeast when I grew up. Here in the southwest of Southeast Florida, and other areas too, not just Florida, but Miami is heavily infiltrated with Cubans, Venezuelans, Colombians, Central Americans, Costa Ricans, Nicaraguans, all these people are around us. It's kind of interesting. Colombians, right? And it reminded me of New York with the melting pot there and so forth. Now, my wife is Colombian, and obviously she's bilingual. My kids are bilingual. But I don't speak Spanish. That's the problem. I've never learned Spanish. But I get away with it because everyone mostly is bilingual, so I can get away with it. But Miami is a beautiful city. The weather is phenomenal. The beaches are very nice, right? You have all sorts of restaurants. You have everything like in New York. I wish they had a better theater district, okay? That would have been nice. But otherwise, it's a phenomenal city. People fly to Miami from all over the world to have this done, right? And so forth. Mainly US and Canada, but I do get patients from even Mozambique, South Africa, Nicaragua, Nigeria, I'm thinking of Africa now, Algeria, Nigeria, and other places there, and other parts of like Philippines or Asian side too that would come. Believe it or not, they all fly in and so forth to Miami. But the bottom line is Miami is a beautiful city. I wanted sunshine every day, and pretty much we get it almost every day. And that was one of the reasons why I moved there. When it comes to my staff, the bottom line is patients first, right? The last thing I want to hear, right? If a patient says, something that, let's say we didn't call them fast enough or whatever, they're going to hear from me, right? My staff is going to hear from me. Quality control is important. Patient communication is important. And without my team, okay, I can't do it, right? Because we have, thousands of patients now, a lot of patients, a lot of people calling in, they have to be taken care of and so forth. And I always tell my staff, we have to do the best we can every day. Always consider them kind of like a family member. We have to take care of them like that. And they do, okay? For the most part, they do, and they take care of that. Sometimes we have different specials we're running for patients or whatever, or all sorts of things. So I remind them that, hey, we're going to do this month. Get ready for this. People are going to be calling and asking questions. Let's go over how to answer those questions. Because if we're going to do a 2-shaft, 2-gland special, whatever, okay, they have to know about that. And we tell them about it. Say, okay, this is what you're going to tell patients. This is the deal and whatever. Hopefully it'll be a big hit and so forth. But overall, the staff is my support structure, okay? Because there's no way you could have a practice like this without a competent, strong staff. It's just not going to happen, okay? There's too many moving parts, too many things going on and so forth. So we work well together as a team. I think overall, most of my staff members like what they do. You know what I mean? It's kind of touchy situation, right? Patients call, female answers. And the guy says, hey, I want a male enlargement, You have to think, hopefully they're not embarrassed, but my staff puts them at ease. That's the thing. They know how to speak to them and so forth, which is a big plus, because otherwise it would be difficult, let me tell you. So, well, when it comes to the staff and their personalities, you have to think that we have representation in just about every Spanish country in the world, okay? They're bringing their culture, their ideas, their animosities, their sometimes prejudices, and so forth. Not that a lot, but when you have, let's say, a Nicaraguan with talking to a Venezuelan, talking to a Colombian, talking to a Cuban, I mean, they all have a different take on things. Because a lot of these staff members are first generation. And some of them were actually born in their country, okay? So they're immigrants, but they're legalized and so forth. So that interaction I'm familiar with. Because when I grew up in New York, as an Italian descent, right? Our family would always say, you go out with Italians, right? So if you brought an Irish girl home, that wouldn't go over so big. So the same thing in the Spanish. I mean, if a Colombian brought, let's say, a Cuban home, there might be a problem. You never know. You just don't. That's what I hear, Or if a Cuban brought a Venezuelan home, what are you doing? That type of thing. I understand that, you see, because the people are the same. I don't care what country you're from. Even though you grew up with this type of group, in New York you had the European thing. We all got along. Everything was great. But when you got regarding marriage and relationships, oh boy, the rubber hit the road. I mean, that's when you said, hey, this is what's going to happen. So, in regarding the Spanish that I have, most of my staff is Spanish, 90% or 95%. I noticed the interaction sometimes with the nationality differences and so forth, the customs and all that. But it's kind of healthy too. Everyone gets to learn a little bit and react. I'm learning myself because it's a whole different scenario. The melting pot of the Spanish is similar but different and so forth than what I have experienced. But overall, everyone gets along, okay? They work things out, and usually there's no major issues occurring in my office. This type of practice, obviously there's a stigma involved, right? At multiple levels. Even patients bringing it up is an issue. Now first, let's go back in time. Let's again go back to the breast implant situation. In the 70s, the doctors who developed the breast implants were criticized heavily. Okay, they wanted to lock them up, type of thing. Because people would say, what are you doing to these women's breasts? You're altering them, they're changing them. What are you doing? There's risks. Of course there's risks in anything we do, okay? But the doctors didn't want to leave their little sandbox and think out of the box. You see, a lot of doctors just like that, and that's okay, okay? But we have to be cautious in criticizing those who want to pave a new way, right? Come up with new treatments, new procedures, and so forth. That might be revolutionary. So these poor guys caught hell, okay? But they made it through, obviously. You could see the stigma of the implant for the breasts. Now it's mainstream. Hey, you can walk around and almost take your shirt off and be proud of it, and no one's going to say anything, right? We're breaking that threshold now with male enhancements. Now, why and how is that? It first started with the big splash with Viagra, erectile dysfunction meds. So now we have the male genitalia on the screen with problems. So people are becoming familiar with it. So the stigma is dropping. And you have other things like testosterone clinics popping up to help men be more manly, help their erections. Again, erections, about the male genitalia. So the stigma is dropping a little bit more. Then I'm coming on a scene for the enlargement aspect of it, right? And so forth. We have not overcome the stigma yet. Even men are very cautious in what they say to their friends. I don't want to mention it. It's like a little taboo-ish. But eventually it has to break through. It has to. Because it's there. It's not going anywhere. Okay? It's only going to be like, eventually people will talk more and more about it. Okay? And the world is going to want to know about it. And we're going to be talking about it. In fact, we might eventually get on the TV and say, hey, do you have LG, low girth, right? Instead of low T, low G, right? Low girth. We're thinking of introducing something like that and so forth. So the bottom line is, yes, the stigma is alive and well, but it's less and less. We're realizing that men do have a penis, right? They do have that. And yes, they have problems with it, right? So we're bringing it out in the forefront of erectile dysfunction and testosterone and Viagra's. Now it's time to say, okay, we can discuss erectile dysfunction. It has to do with blood flow and so forth. But what about the size itself? And we'll be breaking through that ultimately, little by little, chipping away, so forth. The podcast platform was introduced to me, and I realized that it's something we need. we have so much information that we want to share with the public, and that forum is probably going to be the best for us. Okay, we get all sorts of patients from everywhere, from all walks of life, anything anywhere on the planet, and so forth. But I want to bring that to the regular person. I want to bring that to our audience and say, hey, we have these types of people, whether they be, I do a lot of NFL players, for example. There's certain movie stars, there's just businessmen, and the regular person that comes in, even the porn industry too, and we'll talk about that. But I want to interview them to see how it impacts their lives and so forth, and their take on it, and so forth. Now, the interesting part, which is a little controversial, but we will be interviewing like porn stars for a reason. For example, let's say I have a lady coming up soon, and we know that obviously her business is having sex, right, on the TV screen, but that's a physical act. That's like a job, right? So I'm going to ask her questions like, hey, when you go to work, okay, do you actually enjoy it, or do you consider it a job? I already interviewed porn stars already, the males, okay, not the females yet. But the men say in the beginning it's great, but it becomes a job, right? They lose that excitement. There's no love, we know that, but they lose that physical excitement about it. And really it becomes a job to them. So that's what I want to pull out of them and say, hey, what is it like? Do you like to do your work? How is it? How does it affect your mind too, and how it affects your life? But let's flip over to the women for a moment. And this becomes more interesting for the men, because I'm going to focus on the women and ask them targeted questions and say to them, do you like larger? Do you like longer? Do you like thicker? How do you feel about it? And so forth. Would you not go out with somebody because of that fact? And so forth. How much does it weigh on your importance scale of somebody? So if you're going to fall in love with somebody and marry them, is that penis size that important? And so forth. Okay. Is it more important to have a wonderful personality and being a loving partner versus maybe not being so nice but having a bigger penis, and that's better, right? People want to know about that. Of course, you're going to have a variety. Like I picked these two ladies we're going to interview. One of them we know likes longer penises, and the other one does not, okay? So we have contrasts here, and we're going to find out what the story is with that, right? What's in their minds of women, because men want to know. What's in the mind of a woman? What does she want? What does she want to see?